Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla. Let's go over the market. Another phenomenal day for Tesla. And let's just discuss what is happening and, well, what we can expect moving forward. So with that being said and done, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership is live. That link is down below for $3 a month. You get access to all my intraday thoughts, posts, updates, technical analysis, options flow on Tesla, and sometimes other stocks. Today, I actually did post a bunch of other stocks, mainly because Tesla, for me, at the very moment, is a bit overextended. So, I'm kind of letting it cool off a little bit and seeing where, the dust settles, if that makes sense, before I go in for something a little bit more long-term, I guess, if that makes sense. But with that being said, let's jump into it. Tesla closing the day up about 6.5%, closing at pretty much $246 per share, which is crazy to say considering we were at like, what, 180? Not even that long ago. It really felt like it was, pretty much like a week-ish ago. We were talking about the 180s, and now we're already at 250 pretty much. Pretty unbelievable stuff, honestly. But with that being said, there is, of course, some caveats to mention here. So let's talk about it, right? What happened today, right? Tesla, of course, just continuing the rally today, right? It did actually, once again, pre-market. These things always happen in pre-market lately. The past 2 days is almost kind of annoying, honestly. The day before that, right? We had the pre-market retest back down all the way at 205. 205 just seems like crazy that we're even like that far away from it now, right? But, just literally 2 days ago, we were at 205 retesting it, and then we continued rallying up even further, went sideways, went up pre-market, came back down, retested this breakout that we had also, again, happened pre-market, above 230, 231, something like that, came back down, retested it, and then went up again. We're just consistently doing this over and over, right? We're just, breaking above a level, unfortunately retesting it pre-market, and then rallying usually pre-market as well, and then we, again, go sideways, pre-market, we break, retest pre-market, and we rally again, right? We're just consistently doing that. Whether or not that's going to happen again on Friday, well, that remains to be seen. But, today was a pretty phenomenal day, right? So let's go ahead and remove this for now. The way I looked at it is, actually, no, I'll keep it for now. The reason for that is because, in pre-market, you can see here, we rejected at about $240 per share. Market opened up. Tesla on the first 15 minutes came up right to that same level, seemingly rejected, started putting up a bit of red candles, but because we broke above this candle on this candle right here and we rallied up even further, Tesla was poised to move up even higher to the next stage, right? And I had these levels mentioned yesterday, and the lines were here yesterday, right? This kind of 245, 246 level was here yesterday. The one above that I have is about 265, right? And I'll show why I have those levels, but they were there yesterday. They were there probably the day before. So these aren't put in after we got here. They were already there, right? And I told my members, if we break above the 15-minute candle that we had, initially to start the day off, we most likely head to about 245. That's exactly what happened, and we pretty much closed right at that 245-ish level. I ended up scalping this. I ended up making, a few $100 just off of a quick 10-minute trade, which was pretty nice. And, I ended up closing it out for a nice little profit there. So I'm not, too sad about that. I did have to roll some of my calls on my long-term account. My short-term account, the calls that I have, the sold calls I have are, let's just say they're in the money. I'm still deciding if I want to roll them up a little bit for Friday just to kind of, stall or not. But my short-term account, I did roll up and out, a month out, all the way up to about 260 because I don't think we'll go much more than 260. Anyways, that's another story. But so the way it is pretty simple, right? I mean, we're pretty much closing with still strength. We're closing above this volume profile, which I'm honestly a little bit surprised that we just blasted right through it. But you can see we're still technically, as I zoom out over here and get more volume, data, if you will, we're still entering this massive volume area right here, right? You can see massive volume down here, and this is why this area took so long for us, right? This kind of 180s, 190s, 170s, right? This is why this area took so long for us to get through and to get past and to really blast off, right? Massive volume over here. But the next massive volume area that is, that exists really is pretty much where we're at right now, right? We're entering that massive volume. We're pretty much right dead smack in the middle, with the highest one being pretty much just shy of 260, right? We're dead smack right in this massive volume. But the reason we moved up so quick and the reason we blasted off this quickly from pretty much 190 all the way up to 250 within literally days is because you can see the volume profile here very, very low is compared to the what we were at about 180 and where we're roughly at right now, pretty much right around this 240s, 250s, 260s, whatever, right? Very low volume, and we just blasted right through it. Now again, I want to make it very clear, you can go up through this volume profile just as fast as you can go down, and we did go down pretty fast. As you can see here, we blasted right through it to the downside over here before, right? Massive drop that we had on Tesla all the way back here, right? That did, of course, happen. So, we're kind of doing the opposite, except we're actually going up even faster than we dropped, which is pretty impressive. But the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that even if, let's say, Tesla does reject here, there is still, in theory, I don't think it'll happen. I think we'll actually kind of, if we do drop, I think it won't go all the way back down to, like, say, this volume profile. At least right now, I don't think it will. But, we can go back down through that volume profile the same way we went up, right? Just keep that in mind. It's not a one-way street. The way you go up, it goes down just as fast as Tesla goes down, and it goes back up just as fast, right? And we've been saying that many, many times. But, the way to look at it is, we broke above this 230 level pre-market. We retested it pre-market and we gapped right above, and we went up to the next level, right? Which is about this 245 level, right? Which you can see here. I have these levels laid out over here. The next pivot point is going to be probably the most important one, in my opinion, in terms of just simple, pivot points, typical, like, trends, if you will, breaking, previous highs, etc. Pretty much is going to be 265 roughly, right? This is probably the most important level to me, right? Obviously, breaking above this green trend line is important. There's a caveat to that I will mention slowly, but the beautiful thing about these kind of, horizontal levels is that there's no way to kind of play it out or there's no way to make excuses about it, right? And I'll explain what I mean by that. Because again, these horizontal levels, it doesn't matter if your chart's in logarithmic, it doesn't matter if your chart's in linear. These horizontal levels, they exist regardless. The trends exist regardless. Breaking above 265 to me means that the long-term trend has officially turned bullish. Until then, technically the long-term trend, in my opinion, is still bearish, right? Until we break 265. The medium and the short term are bullish. Long-term is still bearish. 265 break, long-term is also now officially bullish, in my eyes, of course. Now, if we break above, maybe Friday even, above pretty much, let's just say, to make it simple, 250. If we break 250, honestly, moving up to about the low 260s, like high 250s, low 260s, in my opinion, is pretty much the next stop. I think that's a very real possibility, and I think we'll probably head up there pretty damn quickly and continue this FOMO rally that is, in my opinion, probably going to be sucking in a lot of people that either sold too early, maybe just didn't have a position at all, or maybe sold to, or maybe just sold for a loss way before this rally even started. This FOMO rally, and I mentioned this before, Tesla's phenomenal at getting the FOMO rally, right? It's very good at making people scared when it drops, because it drops pretty significantly at times, but it rallies just as fast to get that FOMO win and to really punish the late buyers and chasers. And I still believe this is happening, and it can still continue to happen, right? There's no top signal for Tesla. I want to make it very clear. I'm not bearish on Tesla. It's just, if there was a place to, make a top signal, the first level was around 230. That clearly was in the area. Next level is pretty much right around here, around this 245-ish level. Let's see if we get one. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Who knows? That's another level. If not here, and we break above it, the next level will absolutely be 265. So we'll see, right? But if there's a level to make a top signal and for Tesla to finally begin the cool off, it will be at one of these levels. I don't know which one, and I'm not here trying to, blindly short the stock and pray I get it right, completely just through randomness, essentially, right? I'm not gambling this. I'm not shorting this, nothing. And I did roll my cover calls on my smaller accounts to 260 actually. So I have more room to the upside, though unfortunately my main account, that's my trading account, that's like, more aggressive. A little bit in the money now. I'm not gonna lie. They're in the money. Pretty, they're in the money. Anyway, so what happens next for Tesla? The thing is, you have to remember MACD, pretty crazy little, MACD, green, if you will, change, if you will, over here, right? The way it's just pointing straight up is pretty wild, right? But, it's still bullish. There's no question about that. Kind of like how it was just pointing straight up here for quite some time. It's bullish. There's no question about it. It's bullish. But it is getting pretty crazy at this moment, right? It is getting a little overextended, but not too crazy. In my opinion, the MACD still has more room to run. What is getting overextended is the RSI. Technically still has more room to run. We've been higher before, but we are getting and approaching some pretty historical levels of, how high we are in the RSI. Remember how when we were all the way down here and Tesla was at like 150s or whatever it was, and I was saying how Tesla is pretty much at historical levels in terms of how low the RSI is? We're already doing the opposite. We're already entering some pretty historical highs for the RSI. Doesn't mean it has to drop right here. Doesn't mean this is the top. But again, like I said, we're starting to enter some pretty crazy levels here. So a cool off, wouldn't be too surprising. But again, there's nothing signaling that it has to happen starting Friday. We could still go higher. If we break above 245, 46 or whatever, like really 250 to make it simple, we can even go higher. Like I said, maybe even close to 260. Very real possibility. But again, just it's worth noting, we are very, very, very overextended on the daily and lower time frames. Stochastic, same idea, right? Every time Tesla has entered, as I zoom out, like there's a lot of stochastic, data over here. Every single time. This is where we are. I'm mousing over right now. You can see like the horizontal line. This is where we are currently at right now. We're at pretty much historical stochastic levels on Tesla here. Doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean it has to just completely crash on Friday. It could, but doesn't mean it has to. There's nothing pointing to that signal. It's just, these are signs I personally look at with some, caution. Just, my personal opinion, right? Take it as you will. Doesn't mean you have to listen to it. Doesn't mean you can go all in on calls for all I care. That's your money. You can do what you want. It's not financial advice. But again, every time we've entered these elevated levels on the stochastic, a pullback was around the corner. Could be tomorrow or Monday or Friday. Could be Monday. Could be sometime later than in that week. Who knows when? But again, it's just all about that risk versus reward and the probabilities. Now, going over to the weekly chart. Now, the weekly chart is looking pretty good. And this is where I was talking about how things can be a little bit interesting. So right now, my chart is in linear, right? It's in linear, and it's showing that, we're getting this beautiful breakout of this kind of final Bosch trend line I've been talking about for quite some time, which currently that pivot point or that breakout point is pretty much in the very low 230s. So for instance, if Tesla closes below 230 by Friday, this would be a pretty bearish false breakout, right? It would be. If we do close above it, that's bullish. Could still make a run for the 260s, but ultimately a move back down to retest this breakout on the linear chart will bring us back down to somewhere in the 220s. And assuming that holds, all that is just a simple retest, and we most likely move up even higher. But it gives time for the things like the stochastic and whatnot to potentially get a bit of a cool off. Now, this is where things get interesting. If I press Alt-L on my chart, you can see the chart kind of moved a bit. Why? Well, because I switched from linear to logarithmic. Now, what happens with this trend line, right? Well, it has to get redrawn because linear or logarithmic takes into account these kind of, longer time frame charts more. It's more accurately, or not accurately, I guess, but evenly weighted, if I'm not mistaken, right? So things are just more proportional to each other on a longer time frame, if that makes sense. So for instance, if I take this exact same trend line, obviously I have to redraw it now because the chart's scaling essentially has been changed. Started from the very top, right? This all-time highs, of course. And now we take this and we connect the top points of each of these levels roughly right around here. And where did we stop? We stopped pretty much almost dead smack or right at the potential break zone on the logarithmic chart. Give or take, of course, right? Again, it's not drawn to perfection, but it's pretty darn close. So this is pretty interesting. So we'll see how the weekly reacts to this. This is why I'm sometimes just not a fan of these trend lines because, again, you can see how much of a difference it makes whether you're in logarithmic or whether you're in linear. Now, in theory, I will say, technically, if you're looking at a weekly chart like this with trend lines, in theory, you should be on a logarithmic chart because a logarithmic is usually better overall for longer time frames, even daily, weekly, especially monthly, right? Because it makes everything more weighted accurately to each other, right? It's not kind of weird, right? Well, linear is more for shorter time frames, from my experience, of course. That's just my opinion. Now, that's the way I look at it. So again, if you're looking at it on a logarithmic chart, we're pretty much right at the resistance point. We'll see if we actually break through it or not on Friday. That will be pretty interesting if we actually break through it on Friday or not. But if we do, at the very least, we see 260s in my opinion. Now, we'll see if that plays out or not. But that's the main thing I'm looking at. Options flow, of course. Tesla, substantial amount of option activity today all over the place. Obviously, bulls absolutely dominated. There were definitely some puts that came in pretty aggressively. You can see here, right? But the bulls absolutely dominated the overall, the options flow today. I actually just noticed this, but I didn't see this before. It just came in. We did have a dark pool come in today as well. You can see here at the price of about 246, right? About 61 million. Not as crazy as yesterday at 230. We had about almost 500 million, but still some dark pool coming in here at 245, 246. We'll see if that acts as a resistance as well. It possibly could not. We'll see, but something to keep in mind as well, right? But ultimately, Tesla, even though there was a substantial amount of calls coming in today, you can see it's nowhere found on the bullish or bearish charts really in terms of the confirmed bullish flow. My opinion is most likely because people are just simply taking profits. It's really just that simple. Because also a lot of the very pretty ridiculously aggressive bullish flow that I did see today, a lot of it was for this Friday. They were very short-term bullish flow call options, right? So profits could have easily been taken on those. We'll see, of course, on Friday and how Tesla reacts to that, of course. But the main thing I'm looking at is pretty much, again, on the logarithmic chart, we are right at that resistance. We'll see if we break it or not. On the linear chart, we have broken it. That's the issue with that. But this is why I always usually revert to the horizontal lines and the horizontal levels, which again, in this case is 265. Breaking above that, to me, the trend has been shifted to long-term bullish. That's just the way I look at it. But again, overall, even on the weekly chart, you can see stochastic starting to enter some pretty elevated territory. Again, still room to run, of course, but pretty damn elevated. RSI, not yet overbought, but it's starting to approach those levels, but there's still room to run. So in my opinion, the weekly still has more room to run. The weekly is not overbought too crazy just yet. There is more room to run, but pretty much every time frame, daily and below, is quite overbought. Pretty extremely, I would even argue, overbought. My bands regression here, you can see the daily chart literally can't even keep up with the bands. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. Again, usually when these kind of things happen, it doesn't sustain very long. We'll see if that's the case or not here. You can see the weekly even is now approaching the overbought, like extreme overbought territory. It's hugging the top red line, which doesn't happen often. It happened once, before here where Tesla did squeeze extremely. This was like that major squeeze, right? That happened initially. That pretty much brought us to all-time highs. And it didn't really happen ever since, honestly, right? Ever since this all-time highs, it's never approached these levels. Actually did, I guess, once over here. You can see we got very close to it. And we did, of course, get a substantial sell-off following through that. I don't know if that'll happen this time, but we are essentially at extreme levels of being overbought also on the weekly chart. So there are some pretty extreme levels here that Tesla is at right now. This is a pretty extreme move, to be fair, right? I think, that goes without saying, but, nothing's showing a top signal yet, in my opinion. Tesla, in theory, can absolutely still run even further. There is still more room to run to the 260s, we'll say roughly. I think that's still a very real possibility, especially if we breach 250 or like high 240s to 250. I think it's a very real possibility. I personally would only scalp it. That's just my opinion. I'm not going to be entering, like buying, crazy amount of shares right here and just holding on for the long term. Not here. Just my opinion. I wouldn't do it here. That's just my opinion, of course. But again, if you breach those levels, I will most likely enter for trades, quick trades in and out as I scalp this, as I wait for Tesla to, of course, kind of cool off and let the dust settle. Because right now the euphoria is extremely high, just like back here when we were sitting at all the way. I see my chart's messed up because I'm in logarithmic. But back when we were sitting all the way down here at the 140s, remember that? And everyone was really bearish on Tesla. What happened on Tesla then? Well, we clearly ended up having a massive bounce, right? The sentiment down here was so overwhelmingly bearish. Even I was sometimes convinced that Tesla was heading sub 100, honestly. But I kind of held true and I didn't, panic sell or anything like that. In fact, I actually bought a bit more here, right? I remember I bought at 139 as it dipped on my smaller account, my long-term account. I remember I bought some shares at like 138 or 39 purposely, just because I'm like, ooh, 139, cool. Anyway, the opposite is true, right? People are very bearish. Everyone is screaming for 100. We bounced. And you can look at the video, I was bullish here. Or at least I wasn't bearish, but I was more bullish than bearish for sure. Opposite's happening here. Everyone's screaming for 300, higher than that. We'll see how that plays out. Again, usually the opposite happens. It just takes some time. Doesn't mean it has to happen instantly. But again, we'll see. All in all, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. If Tesla does retrace, I really want to see where the weekly closes, but there is a chance that the retrace only brings us down to 230s to 220s. That is a possibility. If we close below 230 on Friday, I do believe that retrace will be more substantial, and we most likely will head back down to about the two teens, if you will, if not all the way back down to $200 per share roughly. So anyway, we'll see how Friday closes. That's gonna be important. But all in all, thanks for watching. See you for the next one. Peace.